Picture this. You're at a networking event. Everyone's exchanging business cards like Pokemon cards, talking about their journey and how they're crushing it. The camera slowly zooms in on your face, the only one not playing along. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like you were speaking a different language, even when you said nothing at all? Maybe it's the forced LinkedIn smiles, the shallow small talk about synergy and growth mindset, the parade of surface-level success stories you're expected to applaud. And yet inside you, there's a thrum, a hum of dissonance, a quiet voice whispering, "This can't be all there is." You try to silence it. Scroll TikTok, binge Netflix, doom scroll Twitter, but the ache doesn't leave. Because the ache isn't a bug in your system. It's a feature, and you are not alone. Studies show that 73% of millennials and Gen Z report feeling deeply lonely even when surrounded by people. 1 in 4 say they have no one who really understands them. Whether you're in Tokyo feeling isolated in crowds, or in New York feeling alone in ambition, or in Mumbai feeling disconnected from tradition, the outsider experience transcends borders. Society has trained you to interpret alienation as dysfunction, to see your inability to just vibe as a personal failure. You're told to practice gratitude journaling, to try meditation apps, to manifest your best life. But what if that persistent disconnection is not your malfunction? It's your upgrade. What if the very things you were shamed for, your intensity, your overthinking, your inability to just go with the flow, are the marks of a different operating system? Colin Wilson called it the outsider condition. And if you felt like a stranger in your own life, you might be running on different software. Wilson wasn't diagnosing mental illness. He was decoding an evolutionary leap. Picture Van Gogh in 2024. He'd probably be on Twitter at 3 a.m., posting paintings with captions like "IDK might delete later." Still misunderstood, but now with metrics to prove it. These people didn't fit in, not because their code was corrupt, but because they were beta testing Humanity 2.0. Colin Wilson himself was broke, sleeping in parks when he wrote The Outsider. No degree, no credentials, no blue check mark. But he had pattern recognition. He saw that the people who feel most disoriented by modern life aren't glitching. They're updating. Your discomfort isn't random. It's your nervous system rejecting shallow programming. It's your inner truth protesting the scripted normal. The 9-to-5 grind, the Instagram perfection, the good vibes only toxic positivity. So here's the shift that changes everything. You're not meant to fit into spaces you were born to transform. Drop in the comments. What was your glitch in the Matrix moment? Practice for today. Grab your phone. Open notes. Title it "Things That Feel Fake." List 5 things everyone accepts as normal that make zero sense to you. Don't filter. Let it rip. Because the only thing more dangerous than being different is cosplaying normal when you're not. Section 2. The Outsider Through Time. A sacred lineage of misfits. They told you no one else feels this way. That you're just too sensitive, that you need to touch grass, that maybe you should try therapy. As if you haven't already tried everything, like, "Oh, thanks. Why didn't I think of just not questioning the entire fabric of reality?" But here's what they don't tell you. Your existential crisis has a Wikipedia page. This isn't new, this is ancient. Last week someone DM'd me, "I feel like I was born in the wrong era." But what if you were born in exactly the right one? Just early to the party. Across centuries, outsiders have appeared like glitches in the simulation, unpredictable, uncomfortable, unforgettable. Dostoevsky wrestled with God in a Russian prison. Today, he'd be writing Twitter threads about the absurdity of existence between Uber rides. Kafka worked a soul-crushing insurance job while writing about turning into a bug, basically the patron saint of corporate burnout. Every Sunday Scaries meme? That's Kafka's legacy. Van Gogh created 2,000 paintings, sold one. His art wasn't because of his pain. It was despite it. He painted to survive, not to be profound. Let's honor both truths, the genius and the genuine agony. Today he'd have an Etsy shop with 5 sales and comments like, "Love your work, but can you make it match my couch?" Each one was told, "You're the problem." But Colin Wilson recognized the pattern. Vision, discomfort, rebellion, isolation, creation, legacy. They weren't broken. They were early adopters of consciousness, and here's the thing. They didn't start strong. Van Gogh didn't wake up ready to revolutionize art. He woke up wanting to not feel crazy. Rumi didn't start as a mystic poet. He was a respectable scholar until his heart cracked open. Buddha wasn't born enlightened. He was a sheltered prince until reality hit. Relatable. Thought so. You might not be in a Russian gulag like Dostoevsky, but you've been in a Zoom meeting that felt like psychological warfare. You might not be Van Gogh in an asylum, but you've doom-scrolled at 3 a.m. wondering if everyone else is pretending too, or if you're the only one who sees the void behind the Instagram filters. A recent study found that existential isolation, feeling like your experience of reality is fundamentally different from others, affects 1 in 3 young adults globally. You're literally not alone in feeling alone. What you carry is not new. It's ancestral. You're part of a bloodline of beautiful weirdos who refuse to take the blue pill. Type outsider. If you've ever felt like you were born in the wrong timeline. Type misfit if you're tired of pretending the system makes sense. Practice for today. Google one historical outsider mentioned above. Find one quote that hits different. Screenshot it. Make it your phone wallpaper this week. You'll realize you're not as alone as the algorithm wants you to think. Section 3. Society's blind spot. Why the outsider sees too much. There's a moment when everything shifts. Mine came at 2 a.m. in a Tokyo convenience store watching a salaryman buy his 3rd energy drink and thinking we're all just trying to stay awake for lives that put us to sleep. Picture yourself in an office meeting room. Everyone's nodding enthusiastically. The presenter's talking about synergizing core competencies. And you're internally screaming, we're all going to die someday. Why are we optimizing click-through rates? People shift uncomfortably. They check their phones. Someone suggests you take this offline. Truth makes people uncomfortable. Because most people aren't living. They're performing life. But look, those robots aren't the enemy. They're you 5 years ago. They're your parents trying their best with outdated software. They're not asleep by choice. The system was designed to exhaust them before they could question it. Colin Wilson called it the robot condition. Most humans run on autopilot. Wake up, check phone, work job they tolerate, watch Netflix, repeat until dead. They don't question the program because questioning would require consciousness. And consciousness hurts. Here's a mind-blowing stat. The average person spends 90,000 hours at work over their lifetime. That's 10 years of their existence. Yet 85% report feeling disengaged from their jobs. We're sleepwalking through the majority of our waking life. Outsiders don't get the luxury of sleepwalking. You're born with the filters off, or life rips them away. Either way, the result is the same. You see what others ignore. The meaningless hustle, the collective pretending, the fact that we're on a rock floating through space and everyone's worried about their credit score. Society has a blind spot, and it's not a bug. It's the operating system. Comfort is the currency. Questions are the enemy. And anyone who points out the emperor's designer streetwear is still naked becomes the problem. Imagine this. You're in a movie theater. Everyone's watching Marvel movie number 47. It's loud, colorful, distracting. But you stand up and say, this is the same plot as the last 46. The lights flicker. People hiss, just enjoy it. Someone throws popcorn. You didn't ruin the movie. You just reminded them they paid $20 to watch the same story again. That's the outsider's curse. You can't unsee the patterns. But here's the paradox that changes everything. Society desperately needs its outsiders, because only those who see the glitches can debug the system. Every breakthrough started with someone saying, wait, why do we do it this way? Every revolution began with someone who couldn't pretend anymore. Comment below. What's one normal thing that makes absolutely no sense to you? I'll pin the most mind-blowing observations. Practice for today. Today, in one conversation, break the script. When someone asks, how are you? Don't say fine. Say something real. Watch what happens to their face. Document the glitch. You're not imagining it. Section 4. The stranger within. Consciousness as a curse. Sarah, 28, software engineer, messaged me last week. I make 6 figures but cry in the bathroom stalls. Everyone thinks I'm winning, but I feel like I'm drowning in meaninglessness. Sarah isn't clinically depressed. She's having an existential awakening in a spreadsheet world. There comes a moment, maybe during your 5th hour of scrolling, maybe in a crowded bar where everyone's shouting about nothing, when you realize something terrifying. You're awake in a world that's sleepwalking. And worse, you can't hit snooze anymore. Colin Wilson described this not as depression, but as an existential collision. I remember the exact moment it hit me. Standing in Times Square at 3 a.m., all the screens off, the crowd's gone. Just me and the naked architecture of distraction. That's what clarity feels like. Beautiful and terrifying. The outsider doesn't just see the flaws in the world, the chalet. They see the void underneath the performance. The morning routine loses meaning. Your Spotify Wrapped mocks you. The 5-year plan feels like a prison sentence designed by someone who hates you. And behind the curtain of everything society told you would make you happy is static. Not peace, not enlightenment, just static. This is not depression. This is lucid discomfort, the price of consciousness in an unconscious world. Research shows that people with higher intelligence and sensitivity are significantly more likely to experience existential depression. Your pain isn't pathology, it's perception. You start asking questions that get you uninvited from brunch. Why do we pretend this matters? Why does everyone act like they're not going to die? Why do I feel more alive in my existential crisis than I did when I was fine? You're not being dramatic. You've just taken off the VR headset while everyone else is still playing. And that's when the real danger sets in. Some outsiders try to put the headset back on. They grind harder, drink more, swipe faster. They become LinkedIn influencers preaching about morning routines while dying inside. But the static doesn't leave. Because once you've seen the code, you can't unsee it. Here's what Billie Eilish understood at 17 that most people never grasp. The bad guy isn't out there. It's the voice inside that knows too much. Take Rainer Maria Rilke, who dropped this truth bomb. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage. He wasn't being poetic. He was issuing a warning: face the void or it faces you. The outsider lives in permanent jet lag between 2 time zones. What everyone pretends is real and what actually is. And yet, this vertigo, this cosmic nausea, isn't the end. It's the beginning. Because when you stare into the algorithmic abyss long enough, you realize something wild. The void isn't empty, it's pregnant with possibility. The meaninglessness means you get to create meaning. From scratch. No instruction manual, no 5-star reviews. Just you and the blank page of existence. Drop a comment with void if you felt the existential vertigo. Practice for today. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Stare at a wall. No phone, no music, no podcast. Just you and the silence. Notice what comes up. The panic, the relief, the urge to check notifications. That's your real addiction showing itself. Section 5. The outsider's spiral. From insight to breakdown. You thought enlightenment would feel like yoga class. Instead, it feels like your operating system is crashing while trying to install an update that everyone else declined. For many outsiders, seeing clearly isn't followed by inner peace and matcha lattes. It's followed by what can only be described as existential vertigo. Your job feels like cosplaying as someone who cares about Q4 projections. Your social media feed looks like a Black Mirror episode everyone's pretending is a sitcom. Your weekend plans, brunch, shopping, Netflix, suddenly feel like you're decorating a prison cell. Nothing hits the same once you've tasted reality without the artificial sweetener. This is the part Instagram therapists don't talk about. The spiral. A friend once told me I had a panic attack in Whole Foods choosing between 47 types of kombucha. Not because of the options, but because I suddenly saw how insane it was that we have 47 types of fermented tea while people are starving. That's the outsider spiral in action. You wonder, am I having a breakdown or a breakthrough? plot twist. Yes, because what's breaking isn't your sanity. It's the psychological scaffolding you built to survive in a world that was never designed for consciousness. The statistics are staggering. Anxiety disorders affect 40 million adults in the US alone. Depression rates have tripled since the pandemic. But what if these aren't all disorders? What if some of it is just the appropriate response to an insane world? Look at Bo Burnham, who turned his pandemic spiral into Inside, a masterpiece about losing your mind in real time. He didn't hide the breakdown. He filmed it, auto-tuned it, and made millions of people say, "Oh, thank God, it's not just me." The spiral isn't madness, it's metamorphosis. But here's what they don't put in the self-help books. Metamorphosis hurts. The caterpillar doesn't just get wings. It dissolves into soup first. Complete cellular breakdown. If caterpillars had Instagram, that phase would not make the feed. Colin Wilson saw this pattern in every outsider's journey. The clarity comes with a cost. You can't see the truth and stay the same. What looks like falling apart is actually falling away, shedding every identity that was never yours to begin with. Your people-pleasing, gone. Your ability to small talk, evaporated. Your tolerance for shallow, deceased. Society calls this depression. But what if it's just decompression? Type spiral if you've ever Googled, "Am I having a mental breakdown at 3 a.m.?" Type soup if you're currently in the caterpillar to butterfly goo phase. Practice for today. Write down 3 things you used to care about that now feel meaningless. Then ask, what wants to emerge in their place? Don't force an answer. Just make space for the question, because the spiral only gets dangerous when you try to stop it. But when you surrender to the spin, you might find you're not falling apart. You're falling into place. Section 6. The Outsider's Rebellion. Rejection of the mundane. It happened during my 47th meaningless Zoom call about leveraging synergies. Something in me just snapped. Not broke, snapped into place, like a dislocated joint finally popping back where it belongs. This is when the outsider stops apologizing and starts refusing. Not refusing to participate out of petty rebellion, but refusing to pretend that any of this makes sense. I stopped laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Stopped attending events that drained my soul. Stopped pretending I cared about someone's NFT collection or their CrossFit PR. Something inside shifted from "I can't do this" to "I won't do this." A study by Gallup found that 60% of young professionals are quiet quitting, doing the minimum required because they've realized giving 110% to something meaningless is insane. The rebellion has already begun. You're not alone in refusing to play. This is what Tyler Durden meant. Not the violence. That's for edgelords. But the refusal to pretend IKEA furniture equals fulfillment. The rebellion isn't loud. It's precise. It's Marie Kondoing your entire existence, but instead of asking, "Does this spark joy?" you ask, "Is this real?" The job? Not real. The networking events? Not real. The pressure to have it figured out by 30? A scam invented by people who peaked in college. But here's where most outsiders mess up. They burn everything down, including the parts of themselves that still believe in beauty, connection, meaning. Don't do that. The rebellion isn't about becoming a nihilist posting Joker memes. It's about becoming so authentically yourself that your very existence is a middle finger to the machine. You start asking the real questions. What would I do if I didn't need anyone's approval? Who would I be if I wasn't performing for an audience? What would I create if I knew no one would see it? That's not chaos, that's clarity. The rebellion is you saying, "I opt out of your reality and substitute my own." Not to be difficult, but to be real. And here's the plot twist nobody tells you. The moment you stop needing everyone to like you, you become magnetic. Not Instagram influencer magnetic, but something deeper, truer. You become what everyone's actually searching for, someone who isn't faking it. Comment burn if you're ready to burn down everything fake in your life. Comment real if you're ready to find what's real underneath. Practice for today. Choose one thing you do only for appearance. One obligation that exists purely because you're afraid to disappoint someone. Cancel it. Delete it. Decline it. No explanation, no guilt, just a simple no. Feel that? That's what freedom tastes like. Section 7. The search for meaning, religion, art, and inner authority. Once you've burned down the fake, you're left standing in the ashes wondering, now what? The silence after rebellion is deafening. You've rejected the corporate ladder, the Instagram lifestyle, the grind until you die mentality. But rejection alone doesn't fill the void, it just makes it visible. This is where the outsider transforms from destroyer to seeker, not looking for another system to follow, but searching for something real enough to build on. My search led me through everything 3 a.m. Wikipedia rabbit holes about consciousness, plant medicine ceremonies in Peru. Spoiler, the answers weren't in the ayahuasca, they were in the courage to look. Creating art no one asked for at 4 a.m., reading Rumi at sunrise, and finally understanding let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. Colin Wilson believed the outsider is fundamentally hunting for the raw experience behind all the rehearsed ones. They don't want the church. They want the mystical experience. They don't want the gallery opening. They want the moment of creation. They don't want the philosophy degree. They want the truth that shatters you. The data backs this up. Studies show that people who score high in openness to experience and need for cognition are significantly more likely to have spiritual experiences outside traditional religious frameworks. You're not weird for seeking. You're wired for it. But here's the trap. When you're desperate for meaning, you'll swallow anything that tastes profound. You might join a cult that calls itself a conscious community. You might follow a guru who's just traumatized with good marketing. You might replace one performance with another, trading your suit for tie-dye but still playing a role. Wilson's warning. The outsider must become their own authority. I'll never forget standing in a bookstore in Kyoto, everyone buying the bestseller about manifesting abundance. But I was drawn to a water-damaged copy of the Tao Te Ching, translated by someone I'd never heard of. That book changed my life, not because it gave me answers, but because it gave me permission to trust my own questions. That's your compass, not what's popular, not what's approved, but what makes your soul wake up. The outsider's search isn't about finding the right teacher. It's about realizing you've been enrolled in your own mystery school this whole time. Every breakdown was a lesson. Every moment of alienation was initiation. Every time you couldn't pretend was you getting closer to what's real. Think about it, Buddha literally ghosted his entire royal life to sit under a tree. Everyone thought he'd lost it. 6 years later, he came back glowing, talking about the end of suffering. That's the outsider's path. Not comfortable, not convenient, but real. Type seeking if you're done with borrowed wisdom. Type finding if you're starting to trust your own knowing. Practice for today. Create one ritual that's just yours, not from a book, not from an app. Maybe it's writing by candlelight. Maybe it's walking without podcasts. Maybe it's talking to the moon like it's your therapist. Make it weird. Make it yours. Make it sacred, because the outsider's spirituality isn't about joining. It's about remembering what you knew before they taught you to forget. Section 8. The void and the vision, when nothingness births insight. There's a point in every outsider's journey where even the search stops making sense. You've rejected the fake. You've sought the real. And then one day you wake up and realize, what if there's nothing to find? Welcome to the void. Population you. I remember my void moment perfectly. 4 a.m. staring at the ceiling in a Bangkok hostel. Not sad, not anxious, just empty. Like someone deleted my emotional operating system and forgot to install a new one. No motivation to chase success, no energy to rebel against it. Just nothing. Your friends post inspirational quotes, you feel nothing. Your ex texts nothing. Your favorite show drops a new season, still nothing. The French philosopher Camus said that 90% of people couldn't handle 1 hour of true solitude with their thoughts. The void is what happens when you're forced to sit with yourself without distractions. And most people would rather die than do that. This isn't depression. You've done depression. This is different. This is the null space, the place between who you were and who you're becoming. Colin Wilson called this the outsider's dark night. But unlike the religious version, this one doesn't come with the promise of dawn. It's Nietzsche realizing God is dead and having to live with it. It's Sartre discovering existence precedes essence and wanting a refund. It's you realizing that maybe there's no secret meaning, just the meaning you make up, and that's terrifying. But also, picture Banksy's shredded painting. The moment it destroyed itself, it became worth more. Not despite the destruction, because of it. That's the void's secret. It's not empty. It's pregnant. When you strip away every borrowed belief, every inherited meaning, every second-hand truth, you're left with the most terrifying and beautiful thing: freedom. Real freedom. Not quit your job and travel freedom. But nothing means anything, so I get to decide what matters: freedom. The void doesn't want to swallow you. It wants to birth you. But only if you can sit in the darkness without reaching for your phone. Only if you can handle the weight of unlimited possibility. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that people who fully experience their dark night often emerge with increased appreciation for life, deeper relationships, and a sense of personal strength they never knew they had. The void isn't the end, it's the beginning. Think about every artist's best work. It comes after the breakdown, not before. The void is the space between demolition and construction. And in that space, something whispers. Not in words, not in feelings, but in knowing. A knowing that you exist. That consciousness is witnessing itself through you. That maybe the point isn't to find meaning, but to be the space where meaning happens. Heavy? Yeah. But you didn't come this far to stay light. Type void if you're in the void right now. Type light if you've been there and found something on the other side. Practice for today, tonight. Turn off everything. Sit in complete darkness for 10 minutes. Don't meditate. Don't try to feel better. Just sit with the nothing. Let it teach you that emptiness isn't the opposite of fullness. It's the beginning of it. Section 9. The false cure. When society tries to fix the outsider. So you've started seeing clearly. You've tasted the void. You've stopped pretending. And now everyone's worried about you. Have you tried yoga? Maybe you need a vacation. My therapist is really good with whatever this is. I once told a friend I think reality might be a simulation and nothing we do matters. And they responded with, "You should try this breathing app," as if the existential weight of existence could be fixed with 4-7-8 breathing. Society has a prescription for everything. Feeling disconnected? Here's a pill. Questioning capitalism? Must be burnout. Can't stop thinking about death? Download Headspace. The mental health industrial complex is worth $240 billion globally. We're medicating existential awareness at an unprecedented rate. What if we're not sick, just awake in a sick system? They're not trying to understand you. They're trying to make you easier to be around. Colin Wilson saw this pattern everywhere. The moment an outsider's vision becomes inconvenient, society rushes to pathologize it. Van Gogh wasn't a visionary. He was mad. Plath wasn't a genius. She was troubled. Your inability to care about your KPIs isn't wisdom, it's depression. But here's what they don't want you to know. Sometimes it's existential awakening. Sometimes it's clinical depression. Sometimes it's both. The key is knowing when you need philosophy and when you need psychiatry. There's no shame in needing either, or both. Think about it. We live in a world where working yourself to death is called hustle, but questioning why is called mental illness. Where scrolling for 8 hours is normal, but sitting in silence is concerning. Where fake happiness is healthy, but authentic despair needs medication. Research shows that in many non-Western cultures, what we call depression is seen as a spiritual awakening, a shamanic initiation, or a call to deeper purpose. We're the only culture that treats existential depth as disease. The cure they're offering isn't always healing. Sometimes it's sedation. They want to dial down your sensitivity until you can tolerate the intolerable, until you can smile at small talk again, until you stop making everyone uncomfortable with your questions. But what if your discomfort is the sanest response to an insane world? What if your refusal to adjust is the healthiest thing about you? This doesn't mean all help is wrong. Sometimes you need support. Sometimes medication saves lives. Sometimes therapy is sacred. But only when it honors your depth, not denies it. Only when it helps you integrate your vision, not amputate it. The outsider doesn't need to be fixed. They need to be heard. Not how do we make you normal, but what are you seeing that we're missing? Not here's how to fit in, but here's how to honor what doesn't fit. Because the goal was never to be well adjusted to a sick society. It was to be so radiantly yourself that society has to adjust to you. Type fixed if someone's tried to cure your depth. Type free if you've stopped apologizing for your intensity. Practice for today. Write down every way you've been told you're too much, too sensitive, too intense, too deep, too weird. Now rewrite each one deeply perceptive, powerfully present, authentically complex, beautifully unusual. Because your symptoms aren't the problem. They're the solution trying to emerge. Section 10. Art as the outsider's compass. When words fail, you create. When therapy can't hold it, art can. When no one understands, the canvas does. Because sometimes truth is too electric for sentences, too raw for conversation, too real for Instagram captions. So it becomes a song at 3 a.m., a painting that scares you, a poem that writes itself through your hands while you ugly cry. Colin Wilson knew art isn't the outsider's hobby. It's their oxygen. I think about Van Gogh in that wheat field, painting furiously while locals called him crazy. He wasn't trying to make content. He was trying to survive his own perception. Every brushstroke was a scream transformed into color. Every painting, a message in a bottle thrown into the future. This is what it felt like to be this awake, this alone, this alive. He sold one painting. One. Today, people pay millions to own a piece of his pain. But he didn't paint for the market. He painted because the alternative was combustion. The data is striking. Studies show that people who engage in creative expression have significantly lower rates of anxiety and depression. Art isn't just therapy. It's alchemy. It transforms pain into beauty, chaos into meaning. That's what art is for the outsider-controlled explosion. Franz Kafka worked his soul-crushing day job, then came home to write about turning into a bug. He wasn't being creative. He was being literal. That's exactly how modern life felt, like being an insect in a human costume. His friend said, Franz, maybe try writing something happier. Kafka said, I am literature. Not I write literature, I am literature. Because for the outsider, art isn't something you do, it's something you are. My own moment came at 3 a.m., writing on napkins in a 24-hour diner, tears mixing with bad coffee. The waitress asked if I was okay. I said, I'm creating. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Think about every artist who changed the game. Basquiat spray painting his rage onto gallery walls. Björk turning her heartbreak into alien symphonies. Banksy making the whole world his canvas. Bo Burnham turning his breakdown into the realest comedy special ever made. They didn't create to impress. They created to process, to translate, to prove to themselves they existed. Your art doesn't need to be good. It needs to be true. It doesn't need technique. It needs rawness. It doesn't need approval. It needs to escape your body before it burns you alive. Because here's the secret. The thing that makes you an outsider, that hypersensitivity, that inability to filter, that overwhelming awareness, that's not your weakness. That's your superpower. You feel what others numb. You see what others blur. You carry what others drop. And art is how you alchemize that weight into wings. Type create if you're ready to stop consuming and start expressing. Type burn if you have art inside you trying to claw its way out. Practice for today. Make something. Anything. Right now. Voice memo of you humming the sadness. Photograph of your unmade bed as existential art. Poem written on a napkin about the void. Don't edit, don't judge, don't share. Just let what's inside become outside. Label it truth number 1. Because your art isn't product, it's process, it's proof of life. Section 11. A different kind of strength. From chaos to centering, you've been through the spiral, the void, the attempts to fix you, and somehow, you're still here. That's not luck. That's a different species of strength. Society celebrates the person who never cracks. The one with the morning routine, the meal prep, the 5-year plan. The one who posts good vibes only without irony. But that's not your strength. Yours looks different. Your strength is staying soft in a world that rewards hardness. Your strength is feeling everything without dying from it. Your strength is saying, I don't know, in a world obsessed with fake certainty. That's not weakness, that's evolution. Research on highly sensitive persons shows they process information more deeply, feel emotions more intensely, and notice subtleties others miss. What society calls too sensitive, science calls enhanced perception. You're not broken, you're upgraded. Because the world doesn't need more people who can ignore pain. It needs people who can hold it without becoming it. Colin Wilson believed the outsider's journey leads not to toughness, but to coherence. Not numbness, but integration. I used to think strength meant not feeling. Then I met an old woman in Peru who'd lost everything. Family, home, health. But she radiated something I couldn't name. I asked her secret. She said, I stopped fighting the storms. Now I dance in the rain. That's outsider strength. Not rigid, rooted. Think about Amanda Gorman standing at the inauguration, young black woman with a speech impediment, delivering poetry that made the world stop scrolling. She didn't hide her sensitivity, she weaponized it. Or Frida Kahlo, painting self-portraits from her bed of pain. She didn't overcome her suffering. She included it, made it part of the art. The shift happens when you stop seeing your chaos as the enemy and start seeing it as energy that needs direction. Your anxiety? That's your body saying something needs to change. Your depression? That's your soul saying this isn't it. Your sensitivity? That's your superpower saying handle with care. You don't get rid of the storm, you become friends with the lightning. And slowly something changes. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop explaining your depth to shallow people. You stop apologizing for having standards for your own existence. You realize you've survived every moment that should have broken you. Not by being strong in the way they taught you, but by being fluid, adaptive, honest. By letting yourself break and trusting you'd rebuild. By letting yourself feel and knowing you wouldn't drown. By letting yourself be too much and finding out that's exactly enough. Comment waves if your sensitivity is your strength. Comment lightning if your intensity is your power. Practice for today. Stand up, put your hand on your heart, say out loud, I am not here to be easy. I am here to be real. My chaos is my compass, my depth is my destiny. Feel silly? Good. Do it anyway. Because strength isn't pretending you're okay, it's being honest about what it takes to keep going. Section 12. Awakening the observer. A new mode of being. Here's where everything changes. The moment you stop drowning in your thoughts and start surfing them. Not bypassing, not spiritually bypassing with good vibes and crystals, but actually rising above your own weather system. Last month, I had an existential crisis in the cereal aisle, overwhelmed by the meaninglessness of choosing between 47 types of processed grain. But then, something shifted. I saw myself having the crisis, like a security camera in my own mind. Oh look, there I go again, spiraling about capitalism in the Whole Foods. And I actually laughed. That's the observer awakening, not the critic who judges everything you do, but the awareness that can watch without drowning. Colin Wilson saw this as the outsider's graduation ceremony, when you stop being just the storm and become the sky holding it. It's like upgrading from first-person shooter to third-person view. Suddenly you can see the whole map. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies on metacognition show that the ability to observe your own mental processes is linked to better emotional regulation, decision-making, and overall well-being. You're not going crazy. You're going sane. Your thoughts are still there. Life is meaningless. We're all going to die. Why do I have to pay rent to exist on a planet I was born on? But now there's also something else. A witness. A part of you that can watch these thoughts like Netflix. Intense show, but you're not in it. This isn't detachment, it's perspective. Eastern traditions have known this forever. Buddhism calls it mindfulness. Hinduism calls it the witness. Eckhart Tolle made millions calling it the now. But for the outsider, it's simpler. It's the part of you that can laugh at your own existential crisis. The part that can think I want to die and simultaneously order takeout. The part that sees the absurdity and chooses to play anyway. When the observer awakens, everything becomes workable. The depression is still there, but you're not depression. The anxiety visits, but you're not anxiety. The void opens up, but you're the one looking into it, not falling. It's the difference between I'm broken and I'm experiencing brokenness. Between life is meaningless and I'm having thoughts about meaninglessness. Small shift, universe-sized difference. Because when you can observe your patterns, you can change them. When you can see your triggers, you can choose your response. When you can watch your mind, you're no longer its prisoner. Type watching if you felt the witness wake up. Practice for today. Next time you spiral, probably within the next 3 hours, pause. Say, I see you spiral. Cute. What are you trying to protect me from? Then watch what happens when you treat your chaos like a toddler having a moment instead of a crisis requiring evacuation. Because you're not your thoughts. You're the space where thoughts happen. And space can hold anything without breaking. Section 13. The sacred role of the outsider plot twist. You weren't broken, you were just early. Everything that made you weird, difficult, too much. It wasn't a bug in your code. It was preparation for your actual job. Which is what exactly? To be the canary in civilization's coal mine. To feel what others won't feel until it's too late. To see what others can't see until it's too obvious. You're not just the person who can't do small talk. You're the one who reminds everyone that small talk is how we avoid real connection. You're not just sensitive. You're the early warning system for a numbed-out world. But here's what I've learned. Your role isn't to judge the sleepwalkers, it's to hold space for their awakening when they're ready. Because we all wake up at different times, triggered by different alarms. Colin Wilson didn't see outsiders as victims. He saw them as evolution in progress. Think about it. Every major shift in human consciousness started with someone who couldn't pretend anymore. Buddha was just a rich kid who couldn't unsee suffering. Jesus was a carpenter who couldn't stop talking about love. Rosa Parks was tired, not just from work, but from pretending inequality was acceptable. They weren't special. They were just done. Done pretending. Done performing. Done accepting that's just how things are. Research shows that social change almost always begins with positive deviance, people who behave differently from the norm and create new possibilities. That's you. You're not a glitch. You're a feature. I remember the day I stopped hiding it. A colleague said, "You think too much." I replied, "You think too little." The room went silent. Then one person smiled, then another. Permission granted. Because society needs its outsiders like a body needs pain receptors. Not pleasant, but essential for survival. You're the one who says this meeting could have been an email and means it existentially. You're the one who asks, but why, when everyone else is asking how. You're the one who can't fake laugh at the boss's joke, because you're too busy wondering why we've agreed to have bosses at all. Because without outsiders, we'd still be in caves, but with really good cave paintings. We'd never question systems that stop serving. We'd mistake comfort for happiness forever. We'd die successful, but never alive. Your role isn't to fit in. It's to stand out so clearly that others remember they have the option. Picture this, everyone's at the party of life, drinking the Kool-Aid. You're the one going, "Anyone else taste almonds? I think this might be poisoned." Party pooper or party saver? History always decides in retrospect. Van Gogh died thinking he failed. Now his sunflowers sell for more than small countries' GDP. Kafka asked his friend to burn all his work. Good thing his friend was like, "Nah, bro, this is fire." Literally didn't burn it. Your sacred role is to be inconvenient truth incarnate. Not because you're trying to be difficult, but because you can't help but be real. And realness is the rarest resource in a world running on fiction. Type oracle if you're ready to own your inconvenient wisdom. Type truth if you're done diluting your message for comfort. Practice for today. Write one true thing you've never said out loud. Start with what I really think is. Let it be sharp. Let it be clear. Let it cut through the BS. Then ask, what if my weirdness is actually my assignment? Because prophets aren't the ones who predict the future, they're the ones who can't stop seeing the present. Section 14. Outsider to initiate, turning alienation into alchemy. So you've accepted your role. You've stopped apologizing. You've owned your weird. Now what? Now you build. Not their world, Tsorujayun. You tried that, it was terrible. But your world, from the inside out. This is where the outsider becomes the initiate, where you stop just seeing what's wrong and start creating what's right. Colin Wilson called this new existentialism, not the French kind where you smoke cigarettes and contemplate nothingness, but the kind where you architect your own meaning. 3 years ago, I designed my first real day, not productive, not impressive, real. I woke when my body wanted, wrote when the words came, walked without podcasts, said no to 3 things, said yes to silence. It felt like rebellion. It was architecture. This looks like designing your day around your energy, not the clock. Choosing conversations that expand you, not drain you. Creating rituals that anchor you, not numb you. Building a life that looks weird from outside but feels true from inside. The data is inspiring. Studies on authentic living show that people who align their external life with their internal values report higher life satisfaction, better relationships, and improved mental health. Being yourself isn't just spiritual advice. It's scientifically backed life strategy. You become a walking permission slip for others to do the same. Not by preaching, not by posting motivational quotes with sunrise photos, but by quietly, consistently refusing to live any other way. The initiate phase is about practice, not perfection. It's waking up and asking, what does my soul need today? Instead of what does my schedule demand? It's saying no to the 10 things that don't matter so you can say yes to the one thing that does. It's treating your life like art, not a resume. Think about every outsider who made it through. David Bowie didn't try to be normal. He turned weird into a career. Frida didn't hide her pain. She painted it until it became power. Prince didn't fit in any box, so he created his own symbol. They stopped trying to belong to a world that wasn't built for them and started building worlds where they naturally fit. That's alchemy. Turning the lead of alienation into the gold of authenticity. But here's the key. You can't skip the lead phase. Every moment you felt like an alien was gathering data. Every time you couldn't relate was showing you what not to build. Every breakdown was clearing space for the breakthrough. Now you get to architect a life that honors all of it. Not despite your sensitivity, because of it. Not around your intensity, through it. Not hiding your depth, revealing it. Type architect if you're ready to stop living in someone else's blueprint. Type alchemy if you're ready to turn your weird into your wealth. Practice for today. Create one new rule for your life, not a goal, a rule. Maybe I don't do meetings before noon. Maybe I only spend time with people who get it. Maybe I create something every day, even if it's small. Write it down. Make it non-negotiable. Because initiation isn't a ceremony. It's a commitment to never betray your truth for their comfort again. Section 15. You are not alone. From isolation to impact. Here we are. The end that's actually the beginning. You started this journey feeling like the only real person in a world of NPCs. But plot twist. You were never alone. You were just tuned to a frequency others couldn't hear yet. Last week I got a message. Your words made me realize I'm not crazy, I'm just early. Then another, I thought I was broken. Turns out I was breaking through. Then dozens more. The outsiders are finding each other, not to form a club. Outsiders don't do clubs, but to confirm, yes, you're seeing what you're seeing. No, you're not crazy. Yes, it's time to stop hiding. The statistics are stunning. 64% of young adults report feeling like no one really knows them. 72% say they regularly hide their true thoughts and feelings. We're living in an epidemic of masked authenticity, but the masks are starting to crack. Colin Wilson saw this coming. He knew the outsider wasn't an anomaly, but an evolutionary emergence. The first drops of rain before the storm of change. And now, the forecast shows a tsunami of consciousness. Look around mental health memes that are actually deep philosophy. People quitting corporate to make pottery. The great resignation becoming the great realization. Everyone's suddenly talking about authenticity like they just discovered it. The world is catching up to what you've always known. The way we've been living isn't working. But here's the beautiful part. You don't have to save anyone. Your job isn't to drag people into consciousness. It's to be so radiantly yourself that you become a lighthouse for others trying to find their way. You become the permission they didn't know they were waiting for. The proof that you can survive being real. The evidence that there's life beyond the performance. I think about every time I chose truth over comfort. Someone was always watching, thinking maybe I can too. Every time I refused to fake it, someone else found courage to drop their mask. Every time I honored my weird, someone else stopped hating theirs. You're not just healing yourself, you're healing the collective by refusing to participate in the sickness. And the others? They're out there, creating at 4 a.m., having existential crises in Target, writing poetry on receipts, choosing meaning over money, choosing depth over likes, choosing real over easy. Your people, your frequency, your tribe of beautiful misfits who refuse to sleepwalk. What would you tell someone who's where you were when you started reading this? Standing at the edge of their own awakening, terrified it means they'll be alone forever? Type your message below. Make it real. Make it raw. Make it the words you needed when you thought you were broken. Because you weren't broken. You were breaking through. You weren't cursed. You were chosen. Not by some external force, but by your own soul's refusal to accept anything less than truth. Welcome to the other side, outsider. You're home now, not because you finally fit in, but because you finally fit yourself, and that changes everything. Wake up tomorrow and remember you are the outsider, not as burden but as badge, not as wound but as wisdom, not as problem but as promise. And in a world desperate for truth, your very existence is the medicine. So stop apologizing for your depth. Stop dimming your intensity. Stop pretending you don't see what you see. The world doesn't need another person pretending to be fine. It needs you, exactly as you are, exactly as you've always been. Too much and just enough. Welcome to your real life. It's about time.